Buongiorno, my friends in Italy. I'd like to thank Professor Ritieni for inviting me here. I'm very, very honored. I was supposed to come and speak to you in person, but unfortunately, whatever happened, happened. But if I did come, I was not going to give a lecture or presentation. I was going to ask one question. What is a nutritious diet? And then we would have spent an entire half hour, 45 minutes trying to come up with a definition. And let me tell you what we will have concluded. We will have concluded that there is no such thing as a nutritious diet. Having said that, let me tell you about my fondness and my experience with Italy and the Italian culture. My mother and my father were born in Italy, my father in Abruzzo, my mother in Salerno. They came to the United States shortly after World War I, got married, and that's why I am here, of course. And I grew up in an old Italian neighborhood where there were first-generation sons and daughters, like myself. I was the first one to go to college in my family. But I remember the beauty of the neighborhood and the gestures they made. For example, this one, when a woman was very angry or excited about something going wrong. Or this one, when a man was angry with another man. Or the one I liked the best, my grandfather used to go like this and call me rimbambito stubito, which in English means dingbat. But I just enjoyed being an Italian. Then I came to Italy way back in the early 70s and formed a joint venture between Mon Edison and Hercules, which is an American chemical company here in the United States, called Adria, the company based on adriamycin or doxorubicin, the anti-cancer drug. I spent a lot it was my first adventure in Italy, and I enjoyed it very much at Farm Italia, etc. Then I met Professor Silvio Garottini from the Istituto Mario Negri, the Mario Negri Institute, and he introduced me to all the padrones who used to own the companies in Italy, of Crinos, Zambon, Menarini, Angelini, Fidia, you name it, Francesco della Valle, Marino Golinelli, Gianfranco Ferro, Alberto Zambon. I met them all. I did business with them all, and I had a wonderful time. Then I met Marino Golinelli from Schiaparelli, and I formed a joint venture with an American company called G.D. Searle. So it was a joint venture with an American company and an Italian company. And then after that, I was on the Harvard faculty for international studies, and I took the Harvard faculty to Italy, where we had courses on how to manage biomedical research. And perhaps some of you in the audience attended these courses. And then I took Tufts University over to Italy to teach how to do clinical research, clinical pharmacology, clinical drug development. So my experience with Italy is very, very, very broad and very, very satisfactory. Now, you may have wondered how I got involved in the world of nutraceuticals, how I coined that term or gave it a name. It happened here in the United States. In 1965, it's a long time ago, many of you were not born then, I met a gentleman from France who told me about carnitine. And it's a long story, but I brought carnitine into the United States. I conducted the clinical trials with it and met Dr. Claudio Cavazza from Sigma Tau, the late Claudio Cavazza. And we created a joint venture to develop carnitine in the United States and internationally. And as we were developing it in the United States, I found it in the health food store, freely available as a dietary supplement for anyone to purchase. And here we are developing it in a very costly pharmaceutical system. So I said, what is this health food store? I never knew anything about that. This is something new to me, dietary supplements. And then I said to myself, there's no proof that any of these things work clinically. Now, I'm speaking clinically. Very little evidence that these things work clinically. So I became interested in how to develop a regulatory economic system to encourage clinical research on dietary supplements and diets, of course. And that's why I coined the term nutraceutical. And by the way, I coined it in Rome. I was having dinner at a restaurant in the Piazza Pantheon, and I had a lot to drink. Then we took a walk. We went to the Piazza Navona, and I said, I got to give a name to a nutritional product that works clinically. So I coined it, I jumped the mind, nutraceuticals. So I coined the term, and now it's in the Oxford English Dictionary. They give me credit for it, believe it or not. It's in many, many dictionaries now. A nutraceutical is a food or parts of a food that have a clinical benefit both in the prevention and the treatment of disease. Clinical benefit, proven clinically. You got that? So what happened, I had conferences in the United States, in Manhattan and Washington, D.C., nutraceutical conferences, trying to educate everyone in the food and pharmaceutical industry and the health industry about the importance of nutritional substances and how we should do clinical research on them. And what happened, we succeeded. And then something very, very, very tragic occurred, which I think very tragic. Within the past decade, the past 10 years, many studies now have been published on dietary supplements and diets, the prevention of cancer, the prevention of heart disease, the herbal remedies and ginkgo and ginseng, all tested for a variety of medical conditions, and most of them have proven that these things do not work. Not proven. By clinical studies, the results of clinical studies have shown that they do not work. They may work, but the studies may not have been designed properly. But nevertheless, what do we have now? We have studies coming out that say even fat, saturated fat, may not be bad for you. Salt may not be bad for you, or salt is bad for you. Go on and on and on. Vegetables are now not important in prevention of cancer, nor fats. Carbohydrates now are sometimes good for you and sometimes bad for you. Antioxidants, well, nobody knows about those. So here we are, a series of studies now, most of them recently, showing that dietary supplements and diets do not work. Something is radically wrong, my friends. Something is radically wrong. Now, is it due to poorly designed clinical trials? Perhaps. Is it due to the fact that they don't work? I have problems with that, but I will say perhaps. I have to be intellectually honest. You know, I can't be an advocate of something I believe in when the proof's not there. So I said to myself, I better look further into this, but I have an idea perhaps where to go from here. Now pay attention to this, because carnitine to me was the great teacher from the point of view as a pharmaceutical, from the point of view as a nutraceutical. The early studies I did at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research during the Vietnam War revealed to me something very, very fascinating, and subsequent studies. Carnitine worked in acute conditions, subacute conditions, chronic conditions. It worked when there was a deficiency in the entire body called primary carnitine deficiency, which is approved now by the FDA. And it saves the lives of a lot of kids with this genetic disease. Thank God we did those studies. And then we have carnitine caused by a medical device. For example, renal dialysis drains the body of carnitine. And we have to it's approved by the FDA, by the way, for the treatment of patients on renal dialysis. For some of you who don't know about carnitine, it transports fatty acids into mitochondria to produce ATP, or the God molecules, ATP. Some say DNA is the God molecule. Who knows? Who knows? Anyway, so that had me thinking about natural substances in general. And then we found out, for example, that in an organ, in primary, let's say heart failure, you have an organ deficiency, not a body deficiency. And then with myocardial ischemia, lack of oxygen to the heart, which you get before a heart attack, that part of the heart that lacks oxygen loses carnitine. And if you give carnitine, it reverses the ischemia or the electrocardiographic changes and the biochemical changes. So here we have carnitine teaching me a lot about natural substances. And a diet is a natural substance, and a dietary supplement is a natural substance. So I said to myself, hey, maybe we should start looking into the cell instead of the serum. Because now, very few people look into the cell. They look for a single substance, which is a great error. So the cell levels can be low, but the serum levels could be normal, which can fool you. That's why we must begin to start looking into the cell. For example, in diabetics, the blood levels are normal of magnesium, but in the cell, the magnesium levels are low. And magnesium is very important for a variety of cardiovascular reasons and other reasons. So I often wondered why these things don't work, these dietary supplements don't work, these diets don't work. And then I said to myself, well, the cell doesn't need them. If the cell's not deficient in them, it doesn't need them. That's why multivitamins don't work, perhaps, because the cells don't need them. That's why diets don't work, because the cells don't need them. The cells just do what they want to do. They reject. For example, if you went to the health food stores, now listen to this, if you went to the health food stores in the United States where dietary supplements are freely available to purchase by the consumer and took them all off the shelf and replaced them with pharmaceuticals, FDA-approved pharmaceuticals, freely available for purchase, where all the customers can go in and buy the stuff, take it home, and swallow them. Half of America would be dead in 6 months or hospitalized. So I said to myself, why is there a lack of toxicity? There's a lack of efficacy. Why is there a lack of toxicity? And then I came up with my theory. It's called the, I forgot the name of it. It's the cell nutraceutical acceptance rejection theory. Bottom line, it's self-explanatory. But let me tell you one story. At one of our conferences, Dr. Claudio Cavazza, my good friend, the former proprietor of Sigma Tau, good man, we had lunch with a woman who took 100 dietary supplements a day, 100 a day. And I know the woman. And so while we were having lunch with her, she put 33 pills on the table. And starting from the appetizer to dessert, she would periodically pick up one pill in her mouth, and another one, with a beautiful cadence. It was beautiful to watch. But it was so appetite depressing that Cavazza and I lost our appetites just watching her. But years later, she continued to take these 100 tablets, and I sent her to a physician to do routine physical, not an extensive one. The blood levels were normal, minimum osteoporosis, no pathology. She was about 65 at the time, and she had been taking it for about 10 years. So that's kind of confirms the exception rejection theory, just that one patient. Anyway, to continue the story, what I did, I formed a company called Intracellular Health. You know, I'm not a businessman, but I have to do something with this new finding. So I went to the board of Monsanto, you know, the great Monsanto, and presented my proposition, my company. And I said, let's go to some large hospitals, the Mass General at Harvard, etc. And all the patients will draw bloods and do biopsies, whatever, and look at the intracellular levels of all nutrients, of all natural substances, etc. And then we'll formulate various formulations to replace the deficiencies and see whether we can impact their disease. And we can patent those things, even though they wouldn't be the strongest patent, but you can patent them. And the board was very, very polite and highly interested, but the people below, and as often happens, it's called the NIH syndrome, not invented here syndrome. It was rejected. And I went to companies like Pfizer, with the chairman of the board, it was my friend, and General Foods, to see whether they would do a joint venture. And it was too new for them, too out of the ballpark. It's still kind of new, by the way. I hear no one talking about it. So My venture failed. My venture to create the first nutraceutical intracellular company failed, but that's an opportunity. Before I go on to my conclusions, I'd like to talk about calcium as a dietary supplement and antioxidants, two issues that kind of fascinate me. Let's start off with calcium for the treatment of prevention of postmenopausal osteoporosis. I believe it was in 1983 when the National Institutes of Health came out with recommendations that women should take calcium to, not with the greatest data, but what else? There was nothing else around, and they thought calcium was safe. To take calcium for the prevention of postmenopausal osteoporosis, and I sort of went along with it, you know. But little did they know one fact, and little do many people know this fact. It's one of the best kept secrets in American nutrition and American medicine, that calcium is a great constipator, a great constipator. Now, if you go back and look at the consumption, this is not a direct correlation, but there's a connection. The consumption of calcium and our divorce rate, due to many factors, they're going up at the same time. And there could be a reason for that. And by the way, I believe this is very possible. Calcium is a great constipator. No one talks about it. It's a great constipator. Now, women by nature do not go to the bathroom or have bowel movements as often as men. Okay? Men are more regular, is the word we use here in the United States. Now, I know, and most physicians will tell you, that when a person becomes constipated, they become very unhappy. They become irritable, depressed, not pleasant to be with. You don't want to be constipated. Never read about it, do you? Now, calcium does that. And so we have now, walking around in the United States, women living that are constipated more than they should be. I recommended way back that they put magnesium in, because magnesium is sort of increases bowel movement, so it can counteract calcium, plus it has other benefits. But very few compounds or products do have magnesium in it, and the doses are kind of low. So my theory is calcium is a cause of divorce and unhappiness, if not divorce, unhappiness in family life and the relationship between a man and a woman. Think about that. Think about that. The other, which really disturbs me a little bit, is this crazy notion that we have that antioxidants are good for you. Show me the clinical data. Show me the clinical data. Every place I go, people say, it has an antioxidant. The tea has antioxidant. The biscuit has antioxidant. Antioxidants makes the thing magic. No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I will say the data are not clear one way or another, but we do know that antioxidants decrease the body's ability to mobilize white blood cells to fight infection. And we do know that old-timers in hospitals frequently get septicemia and die unexpectedly. And I often wonder whether they're high-dose antioxidant takers. So I would stay away from this antioxidant thing, pressing people to take them. So where do we go from here? Well, I think and I'm not sure, but the quest to demonstrate whether chronic administration, long-term diet, long-term supplementation can prevent serious diseases like cancer, heart disease, dementia, arthritis, has come to an end. In fact, Dr. John Ioannidis, who's perhaps the world's greatest statistician. He does meta-analysis, and he's very well known, very well respected. He reviews lots of data and has concluded that even in the best journals, the studies are faulty, statistically faulty, designed faultily. Okay. Regarding nutritional studies, he did a massive study, reviewing them, he and his team. And you know what his recommendation is? Ignore them. Ignore the results. They're so faulty. Now, I wouldn't go that far, because all data tells me something. Even bad data tells me something. But that's the world we live in, and we cannot rely on long-term studies anymore. What I would recommend is short-term clinical pharmacologic model studies, looking into the cell, try the supplement, working with pharmaceuticals. For example, toxicity and efficacy of pharmaceuticals. Let me give you an example with carnitine. I did this work, some of this work. Let's take adriamycin or doxorubicin. We did the original studies of Walter Reed that this anti-cancer drug causes cardiovascular toxicity and limits its dose. So you can't give enough. It's a wonderful anti-cancer drug, but you can't give enough of it because it's cardiotoxic. It kills you. Okay. So we did work. We showed that carnitine blocks the cardiotoxicity of adriamycin. Adriamycin causes carnitine deficiency in the heart. Okay. So we said to ourselves, wow, this is great. So we went to the pharmaceutical company. They had no interest, but subsequent studies have confirmed our finding. Okay, so this means you can perhaps raise the dose of adriamycin by giving carnitine and increase its tumor-killing capacity. So what did we do? We did a couple of studies, but one, we got ovarian cancer cells. Okay, and we put carnitine in the cell culture now. We put carnitine in the cell culture, and then we put carnitine in adriamycin, and then adriamycin alone. But here was a surprise. Carnitine itself had an apoptotic effect. It killed cancer cells. It killed those ovarian, dramatically so. We were so surprised. Carnitine plus adriamycin killed more of them. So here you have a carnitine, adriamycin, or doxorubicin combination that A, can decrease toxicity, B, increase efficacy. So the carnitine pharmaceutical combination offers promise. This should be a major goal for the nutrition industry. Don't stick with oral. The regulators say if you give intravenous or intramuscular, it's a drug. That's a regulatory thing. It's not a medical thing or a scientific thing. You have to give high dose. You have to give intravenous. You have to give intramuscular. You follow up by oral to maintain your blood levels. Think of that. And then the last thing I really like, and I tried this when I formed my company, Intracellular Health. Again, I was having a martini with my friend, and I said to myself, why are people getting old? If you had to look at an old person, you take a look at one. What do you see? What strikes you? What's the big thing that strikes me? It's the lack of energy. A lack of energy. Okay. Then I thought carnitine, ATP, but the problem is we gave carnitine to people. It doesn't do anything. The cell rejects it. The cell rejects it. Theoretically, it should accept it because it needs ATP, but the aging cell doesn't want more ATP for whatever reason. It wants to slow down. So then I came up with the idea, let's create the need. Let's create the need for the cell to want it. The cell doesn't want it, the hell with the cell. Let's make it want it. So I proposed, we almost got this study done, by the way, that in the aging population, we should give testosterone, which increases muscle mass. Human growth hormone, which does the same thing. We'll do a combo. It stimulates the cells. It stimulates the cells to get enlarged. It doesn't do a great job of it, but it does work. Okay. Then let's give the carnitines a mixture of nutraceuticals, ATP-producing nutraceuticals, like magnesium, carnitine, etc. So you create the need. So I give you this as a concept to work on. Whatever area you're interested in, you create a need. Electricity, loading up with water, lowering body temperature, raising body temperature. Do something to create the need. Now, I'm sure I confused you with this talk, my friends, but the nutrition area as we know it is gone. It's gone. We need some new creative thinkers, and I know my Italian friends are very creative. I know that. I know them very well. So I wish you luck. Feel free to contact me through my email. Professor Etienne has it, and the best of luck. And my theme has always been sempre avanti, always go forward. Ciao.